Okay, now we're going to move to hear about the question of language from law. And I'd like to ask Roseline Njogu to take the floor.
Good morning. I am a lawyer, and I would like to spend my 6 minutes talking a little bit about what I have understood the work of language in law to be, or the work of law in language to be. And maybe to start off, I'd like to ask a question and then demonstrate what I would like to show. In the different languages that you speak, particularly African or Kenyan languages, I'd like to know what the word for religion is in anybody's language. The word for religion. Yes? Dini. But is that Kikuyu or is that sort of a Creole from Arabic or Swahili? Anybody else? Yes? Hudin? Din. Okay. And is that of Somali root or is that from Arabic root? Okay. Religion is a concept that is introduced by a very foreign language that seems, or that tries to divide our understanding between religion and secularity, for example. So you colonize a state and you introduce a concept where you divide spiritual, divine experiences, and you describe them in a very different foreign concept. So religion and secularity are seen as two different elements, and yet in the many different languages, if you ask your grandmother if she's still with us, or your great-grandmother what religion she professes, she's likely to say, what do you mean I am Meru? Or what do you mean I am Kipsigis? And that is supposed to be an all-encompassing answer. So I make that point to show that language has a way of reordering or reorganizing thought, introducing new concepts, and making them normal. Now we all think of religion as something distinct, as something, that exists within a certain sphere, and we can ascribe certain things to it. So these things belong in the religious sort of pot, and these things belong in the secular pot. But returning to a question Professor Mbote asked about colonizing and decolonizing language and law. Law and language, to me, are interesting and similar in some ways because they can both colonize and decolonize. We have had conversations, and others have written about how the 2010 Constitution, for example, is a decolonizing jurisprudence. Now, what I would like to think about a little more is if the life of the law, as Holmes has said, is in its experience, I'd like to think about how the law in a very daily, sort of mundane or quotidian way is experienced by people. I recently had a really exciting opportunity to help draft a subsidiary legislation for the Marriage Act. And one of the things that I was very careful to attempt to do is to think about the language that I use in the rules and how that is experienced by people every day litigating family law matters. So how do you trickle down the idea of decolonizing the law using a different kind of language? So, if you pull out an old statute or an old law, you're likely to find, those words that make us squirm a little bit, where the law describes people as bastards or idiots, or you have all read this, right? Instead of a person who is mentally ill, the law called that person an idiot. A person who was born out of wedlock, the law called that person a bastard, and so on and so forth. And this sort of language follows through in our law. But how do you then use the law and use different language to empower people instead? So how do you, for example, very deliberately introduce the language of persons with disability in your law as opposed to calling them what the law has done in the past? I would like to close my remarks with one question about how the law, and I understand that I have not spoken about the different, sort of languages and how they enrich or disrupt, our legal experience, but I'd like to think about law as power and how law is used very often to communicate hierarchies, whether they be gender hierarchies or other forms of hierarchy. Old law, for example, used to say that the male gender, or whenever the law uses he, it means he, she, or whatever. But increasingly, we are moving away from that. We increasingly say she and he because we understand that language communicates important things, and language is important for saying this is the norm, and anybody who is not found within the law is outside the norm. I think I might be out of my time, but thank you very much.